Hello, my name is Dustin Johnson, and I'm going to show you the basics of the Yamaha QL5. The first thing I will show you is the basics to each channel. The first thing is the fader, which controls your volume. The next thing is your display of each channel, which includes color, name, and the input of each channel. The next thing is the on-off switch, or on-off button. This button is typically different than most boards because this is when the button is selected, that means that the channel is on. Most boards have a mute button, so when it is selected, that means the channel is off. This is simply the opposite, and it is actually much more easier if you think about it. The next thing is the meter, which shows the amount of audio to each channel. As you can see over here, I am playing sound through my iPad into these two channels, which are stereo channels, and you can see they are lighting up because I'm getting topping out at minus 12 decibels on these two channels. The next thing is the Q button, which is basically like a PFL if you've ever used an analog board. If you select this Q button, there's different things you can change in the settings and make it so it's a different way, but the main use is for your headphones. So there's a headphone jack in front of the board with a volume control on it, and if you select anything with the Q, which you can do more than one, if you select it, then you're able to hear that channel through your headphones. The next button, which is right above the Q, is probably one of the most important buttons on this board, and that is the select button. Whatever channel or channels, if you're doing more than one, which in this case it's stereo, so two of them are selected, whatever channel is selected, that is what you are affecting on your touchscreen. So you can be changing your EQ, you could be changing your monitor, you could be changing the gain, you could be changing any effects, anything. The only way that this channel is affected is if it's selected. The next thing I will show you are some of the basics of the touchscreen. The first one being the gain, which right here is selected, or is A.gain. As you can see, I touched it once and it became purple. There was a purple ring around it. With that purple ring, what that basically means is whatever is selected with that purple ring, which is only one thing at a time, is now enabled by this touch and turn knob. So as you can see, as I turn it, this knob now moves. So if I were to select pan in this case, I could pan left or I could pan right. I like to call this knob the purple knob because it highlights everything in purple. Okay, so the gain is right here, you can control it. There's another way you can control your gain, and that is via the main gain right here, which is not gain for the whole board, it's still gain only specific to the channel that you have selected. So for 24, which is selected right now, I can affect this and it affects the gain, which just happens to be what's highlighted in purple, but it's only affecting the gain parameter right there. So, or I could click on the gain and control it from here. Okay, so two ways of doing it. All right, so the next thing you should remember about gain, or that's in this gain menu, is if you have it selected, select it once more, and this window pops up right here. Okay, a lot of this you don't really need to pay mind to right now. It's a lot of things that you can access from other menus, which I will show you at a later time, and things that you'll probably never use. But the important part of this panel is your phantom power, which is plus 48 volts. Okay, so since I have channel 24 selected, I have phantom power selected by that button. Now the way to get out of it is escape, or if I had hit it, I could just tap out of the window. Okay, so again, you have to have your channel selected, hit your gain button twice, and it will get you to this menu, and your phantom power is right here. When it's selected, you can also see plus 48 volts right underneath that gain, and that tells you that this channel has phantom power going to it. If I were to click here, you'll see it disappears, or it unhighlights. Okay, so that's a couple things that have to do with this general area, and while I'm here, I'm going to show you one other thing, and that is this button here. Right now it says input 8, and that just happens to be what I have patched to this channel, but go ahead and click on that small box that's right there. Okay, and this panel has three options: patch, icon, and name. Okay, For those of you that are using this board in an advanced setting and will actually be patching each individual channel to get the correct setup you have, you do this by going through here and finding, well, it's already on input, which is the input to the back of the board, or you could go to your Dante, which is your digital snake. So in this case, wireless 8 for my system will be set up into the back of the board and it'll run in input 8. So it's already set up that way. As you can see, I'm still outputting or inputting audio from my iPad in 31 and 32, which are set up right here, which if I selected it, you'll see that it's highlighted 31 and 32. But I'm over here at 8, okay? So what I'll show you, this is what I really wanted to show you, is your second tab and your third tab. Your second tab is icon. So your icon is only used, these icons are only used at this upper right corner, which may not be something you really have to know or have to see. But one thing that it is helpful with is that if you press an icon, like in this case wireless is selected, instead of going to the next tab and typing out your name, which is very easy to do, you have backspace, you have shift lock right here. It's very simple to do. What this does with these icons is when you press wireless, it will actually give you sample names right across here. In this case, mine is named WRL8 for wireless 8. If I'd wanted to name it just wireless, I could have selected wireless. If I want to make this a headset, I could click headset and it just renamed it headset. I want it to actually say wireless 8, so I will actually go over here, I'll backspace, and I will hit wireless 8, okay? And then now it's named wireless 8 again, okay? But that's why I really like the icons, is because whenever you select, it will show you sample names, okay? Also, this is very important, this is your channel colors. So in this case, I have green right here. I also have red, blue, just because I like it, looks cool. But you can select, so for channel 8 right now, or I'm sorry, channel 24, wireless number 8, I could change it to blue, I could change it to green again, change it to yellow, I could change it to whatever I wanted, okay? Or I could actually turn the color off so it has no color. But the way this is really helpful is when you look at it, I know that right now my green are my wireless, and because I have these opposites, it just means that I have stereo channels, which I'll explain later on, between these. So I know that this is pretty much one audience, choir, CD, video are what my inputs are right now. Obviously it would vary depending on your setting. The next thing I'm going to show you is your mixes, which I generally call monitors because that's normally what I output for my mixes. In my case, I have 6 monitors. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These top 6 are my monitors, okay? Also, not only do I have my knobs right here, 16 of them, but I also have my buttons, which are right here, which are called sends on fader buttons. These buttons do pretty much the same thing, but they have a little bit variance between the two, okay? So first I'm going to show you the knobs. So with these knobs, they have on-off buttons. So if you notice when I click on them, they basically lose their color. Normally, I'm just going to leave them on, and as you can see, these knobs are actually turned all the way down, so that is off anyways. So why worry about the extra button? So right now it's off, and as you can see, I selected purple, so again, I can use my touch and turn knob to turn my monitor up. But what you must realize is this monitor channel 1 that I just affected is only affecting whatever I have selected, which in this case is channel 24. So 24 is now at -20 in the monitor 1, I'm sorry, or in mix 1, whatever way you want to think of it. If I wanted to do that to 4, I could click on 4 and do the same thing and put, there's -35, and channel 24 is -35 in monitor 4. Okay? The next thing, the other way of doing it would be, instead of clicking on it to be able to affect it by purple, I could click on the button. So I just clicked on that, now 3 is being affected. Okay, now 2 is being affected. Okay, that's not the only purpose of these buttons. The main purpose of the buttons, from what I've discovered, is that if you press it a second time, so in this case monitor 2, if I press it again, it pops up, this whole board is now different. If you notice, every single on button and select button is on, as well as sends on fader are all selected. What this tells you is that you are now on monitor 2 or mix 2, okay? So this is now displaying each of my channels and the amount that is going into monitor 2. So in this case, I have very little going of channel 24 going into monitor 2, but it's the only thing going into monitor 2. So if I wanted to put some audience into monitor 2, which I wouldn't normally, I'm just using this as an example. Well, let me use CD. I'm going to put some CD into monitor 2. So here you go. I'm going to put that much CD. Okay. Now monitor 2 is requesting to have wireless 7 brought up in their monitor. Okay. And they want it up. Oh, they want it a little bit louder. Okay, I'm going to give them that much. So now monitor 2, this is their setting. Okay. Just make it up. Monitor 2 has this setting set up there. If I were to do this without double pressing, I would have had to do that and select each one and choose the value with my touch and turn knob. This makes it very simple to show what is going to that specific monitor. Now I could select another one, like monitor 4 is now being affected. So this is what I'm sending to 4. Or in 3, this is what I'm sending to 3. But again, you can't mix from here because you're in the monitor settings. So in your monitor, or to get out of this, all you do is you select your flashing button. So I'm editing monitor 3, I'm going to hit monitor 3 again. And now I'm back to my regular settings, okay? And you'll notice all the color disappeared from the selects and the ons. Okay, that is the way that you change your monitors for your specific channels or your specific monitors or mixes, okay? And again, your matrix are right here, which they work the same exact way. You can double press for your matrix, and this is what goes into your matrix 2 in this case, okay? Goes the same way. So one other option for monitors is pre and post fader. The way you get to that is by double clicking on your monitor and it shows pre, okay? Now this is showing pre for channels 25 through 32. That's for mix 1, so monitor 1 in my case. But if I were to come over here and select this, it would show, basically it's showing your groups of each and you can select what you want, pre or post fader. What pre and post fader is basically, think of it this way. If I had this microphone and I'm talking into this microphone, if it was on pre, the audio to mix 1 or my monitor would be coming into my microphone and would be going pre-fader. It'd be going before whatever this volume is for my vocal mic. So it would be going straight into my monitor basically. So if I'm talking to this monitor, as long as the channel was on, then it would go directly into the monitor. Post-fader is basically whatever comes into here would go through my fader, and then after the fader, post-fader, then it would go into my monitor. So basically it would have to be on, of course. The monitors won't work unless your channel was on. If it was on, then if this was normal volume, it would be normal volume in the monitor. If this was really low, it'd be really low in the monitor. That's what post-fader is. It depends on what the volume of your fader is at. Pre-fader would be basically completely set off of whatever setting you had on your monitor. That'd be the sole source of the amount of volume you're getting for that specific monitor or mix. Okay, so that is basically what pre and post fader means. It's typically the systems are left in pre-fader because you don't want to have realize that the drums are too loud and turn the drums down, and then the drummer doesn't have his mix because you turned him down. That'd be in the case of post-fader. You wouldn't want that. You'd want pre-fader so that he could have his own volume controls no matter what you had mixed in the house. The next thing I'm going to show you is something in the settings which is called channel job, which you can find right here. And what this has, there's different options, but couple of the main things that you'll use is channel link. If you press that, basically what this does, in this case, I have 4 sets of stereo channels, and the way I linked them was by coming in here into this setting, and as it says here, hold down selected defining channel and press select of additional channels. So for 7 and 8, let's say I wanted to link wireless 7 and 8 for some bizarre reason, I'm going to hold down 7 and I'm going to press 8. Okay, now they're linked, and vice versa to go the opposite direction. Okay, so in this case, if you see that, right now I have 2 linked. If I press and hold now, audience is unlinked. Okay, if I were to do this and do it again, now audience is linked. Okay, pretty simple idea, very easy to access. You also have your DCA group, mute groups, recall safe, mix minus. They're not really anything I'm going to talk about per se, but here's some other things you might use, such as copy. If you had set up an EQ and all your channel settings for a specific singer on wireless 8 and they walked up there and grabbed wireless 7, you could quickly come here to channel job and hit copy or move, and you would hit the channel that you had originally prepared everything on, and you would click the one that you were moving it to, or in this case copying it to, which would make both of them the same once you were done, or if you'd hit move, it would have actually moved it to channel 7. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of that. The next thing I'm going to show you is the recorder, which is right here. And basically what this is, it's very handy. You put a USB drive into the board, and it will list up, or it'll pop up with different folders and stuff that you have on there, and you can just hit record, which is not lit up right now because I don't have that set up, or I don't have a USB drive in there. You can hit record, and it will start recording, and it just records in the background while you're running your audio. It's a very handy thing to do. I've done it multiple times. It's very nice. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to do an EQ. There are actually 3 different ways of doing this. They're all very similar, so it's very easy to learn, and you can learn one of the ways and remember that way, or you can learn all 3 and use them all different times. It's totally up to you and your preference. The first way I will show you is via the main touchscreen, which is the main screen that you use here. You can see here we have our options laid out right here. Okay, so what we have is our highs, high mids, and low. This is very similar to the way you'll see it on an analog board. Depending on the size of the analog board, it will just depend on how many knobs you've been able to use. Most of the time analog boards would not, actually I don't know if I've ever seen one that has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 different knobs on it specifically for one channel. Normally it has up to 6, I believe, but some will have 2, some will have 4, some might not have any. So I'm going to kind of briefly explain what they are used for, but to do that I'm going to go into the next screen. Also please remember that when I do any effects, when I'm using this EQ, it's only affecting what I'm EQ, or what I have selected. So in this case, I'm going to EQ with the vocal mic, which is 25 right now. Okay, so as you can see, the knobs are located right here, but I want to show you in this screen by clicking this line. It shows you a line value. Okay, the line EQ is what it's called. Basically what it's done is my highs, high mids, low, it's allowed, it's placed dots on the line. For high, it's right there, high mid, it's right there, low mid's there, low is there, and then what we have here is a high pass filter, which I'll explain later, which is that small blue dot. Okay? So as you can see, these knobs are the same as what you saw back here. They're just laid out a little bit different. Okay? So what you have is you have for each of these 4 channels, you have a gain value. Okay? So right there. So if you understand frequencies a little, basically you have your 1K frequency, 2K, you got your anywhere from 20 to 20K, your frequency. So your lows are this way, so your really rumbling low tones are going to be down here, and your high pitch squeaks that are really high pitched you can't control are up here. So what you can do is right now the high is selected automatically on the 10K, and if you had some sort of high pitched tone at the 10K, you could actually lower it by using, I've selected gain high on the 10K, and as you can see, I'm lowering that, and as you can see here it says frequency is at 10K, so my gain is dropping that frequency. Now what it's doing is this is actually cutting, not only is it cutting 10K, but it's also cutting everything around it. Like 5K it's cut about half that much, 2K it's just barely cut, and 20K it's cut a little bit more than the 10K has, because it's not necessarily where this dot is at where you've cut it. I mean, that's the amount you've cut it, but your actual volume is a little bit higher than that because of the way it's shaped. So what this means basically is your high pitch frequencies, you're decreasing the volume. Your gain is volume, so you're decreasing the volume of that specific frequency, and including the ones around it. So if you wanted more of that tone, you could actually boost it by going above the line, and it'd be the same way, but the opposite. Now if I wanted to instead not do 10K frequency, what you can do is select this frequency knob and turn it, and it will actually move this direction, left and right, which will move it across the line. So instead of editing or affecting the 10K, I'm actually affecting 2K, which affects everything beyond that as well because of the type of curve I'm using, which is displayed by that, which is the normal display for the high filter or the high EQ. Okay, you can use your low pass filter, which low pass means that it's letting everything lower than it pass and cutting everything that's high. So what you would do is you'd press that, which is a different curve. Instead of it being a bell curve, which is kind of like what we saw right here, it's kind of a bell-shaped curve. If you see it later on, you'll see that it's kind of bell-shaped. This is actually a shelf. Instead, this is a bell curve, which you kind of will see at a distance, or later on you'll see the bell curve. This is actually a shelf. So it's not engaged right now because the gain is, if you can see, it says LPF because I basically did that and enabled my low pass filter, but it says off. So I have to turn this once to turn it on, and now it's cutting everything starting from my frequency point. So in this case, it's starting from 2.36 approximately. So you can see it moves, so it cuts everything drastically from that point on above in this case, because it's low pass, allowing everything lower than a 2 pass and cutting everything high. So I could go through and do this if I had a really high-pitched noise and I wanted all the highs to just be cut out of it. Okay, so I'm going to actually disable that so that I can continue showing you the rest of the line. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. Right now, I'm not affecting anything. Right now, with it a straight line, I'm not boosting or cutting any EQ volume. So you're getting straight, everything I'm saying into the mic is coming out of the speakers as clean as possible, as clean as can be. Now granted, there's probably still an EQ that's set for the system, or I guarantee you there is, and that will still affect the microphone. But if you wanted to change the EQ of what you're hearing, you would want to do by cutting or boosting your line values. Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is your low mid, or your high mid and your low mid, which I think the organization on this is a little weird because it goes high, high mid, low, but your high mid and your low mid are different than your highs and lows in the sense that you have a third value. You have 3 knobs for each of the low mid and the high mid. So with your high mid, you still have your gain. So again, there's your gain, and there you can see the bell curve a little better. And with it up, you can still see, here's your frequency. You can see how you're boosting frequency 1.18 K at 14. You're giving it 14 extra decibels, and everything beyond it and past it, you're giving it just a small amount. So that's creating that bell curve. But what this Q value is, which many people will call quality, but it's basically the bandwidth of your curve, your bell curve. So by turning this knob, it's affecting all of the channels drastically, but if I were to go really small, it would only affect the 1K area. Or if I want to go completely 1K, here's 1K. So now I'm just only affecting the 1K plus a little bit around it, not very much. I'm just affecting that channel and only boosting that specific channel. So that's what that Q value is that bell curve, which is only accessible for your high mid and your low mid. Okay, you got it right here, and you got it right there. There's your Q values. So for your low, which I'm going to go ahead and decrease this back to normal value, your low does not have that Q value, but it looks like the opposite of the high, where basically it just goes off into infinity as far as the way it looks. And this here, it's still considered a bell curve. And in this case, if you wanted to do this shelf here, it doesn't actually help you because this button here, you're selecting between your bell curve and your shelf, but the shelf in this case only works for your low pass filter, which is cutting here, which is selected there. If you want to do a shelf on this side, you have to use your high pass filter, which again is allowing the highs to pass and cutting the lows. And the way you do that is by selecting high pass filter, which it's kind of interesting that this is your high pass and that's your low pass, but anyways, it will automatically be set to do minus 12 dB per octave, and the frequency that it's currently set up as is 80, the EQ is at 80. So you can sweep it, figure out where you're going to go, and you're going to be cutting drastically your lows from that point. And again, what's nice about this one though is you can just turn it off and decide if you like it or not. With this other one, you actually had to change your curve for your low pass filter. Okay, so that's why you don't have a Q value, because you're going off to the end and you're not going to actually have a complete bell curve. You're going to have only a shelf. Okay, so that's the main way of how to do your EQ, and hopefully that kind of gives you an understanding of what you need to know to do an EQ. To truly learn how to run sound and to know how to EQ comes with experience. You'll learn where your sound is coming from and what areas need to cut. With this, the way this is set up, again, to edit all of this, you're having to select it and use your touch and turn knob. There is a third option. So again, this is your one of your options is here. Your other option is to select these here, which still affect that curve. If you see here, it's still affecting that curve that's on that line. So you have everything accessible here, or you can click here and have it all accessible here. Your third option, which is even easier and which is very nice, and still is dependent on the select knob, or your select button for whatever channel you have selected. It's all located right here. You have your low, mid, high, and then you have your three knobs. Now these three knobs, just because you have the three knobs doesn't mean they work for your lows and highs. For your lows, your Q value is not going to work. For your highs, your Q value is not going to work because you don't have that. But for your low mid and your high mid, it will work, as you can see there, and it's still affecting that line, which is very handy. So if I knew that I wanted to go over here and cut it, and you can still affect it. It's the same exact idea. You're just using the same knobs, and you have to select which high, mid, or low. You're basically selecting which of these dots you want to affect, and these are the ways you can affect them, just by doing that kind of stuff. Okay, that's the way I like to do it. I kind of use both. It depends on where I'm at. If I'm just doing a quick little touch and I've already had a line and I just want to tweak it just a tiny bit, I might select, my low, I just want to boost it another 2 decibels or something. Then I could just do it from here. But if I was actually starting and doing a whole new fresh EQ, I'm probably just going to pull up the larger window so I can actually see the actual decibel values and your frequency values. So what I'm going to show you now is how to open up a specific user. The way you do this is by selecting Setup, and as you can see, my username, which is Dustin, is currently loaded. So what I do is I press that, which is the black box, and I have multiple options. Here I have Dustin as number 1, and I have Tech as number 10. Okay, so if I were to load Tech, I would select Tech and load it, or I could load Administrator or Guest or whatever I was doing. In my case, I'm just going to leave Dustin as loaded. If I had a user saved on my USB drive, which is something that's very easy to do, I could plug that in and I could hit load right here and pop up, and I could scroll through and load whichever user, which is whether I could either save my user, I could save a backup so that if someone were to affect this board and ruin it or try to do an update and it were to lose its settings, I could just pop that in, open it up, and load a user. It's very nice to do. Okay. What you can do once you're in with this user is you have some user settings, which are right here. You have preference, which is basically what you're able to do with that user. And you have user-defined keys, which are over on the side here, 1 through 12. You have different options. I have set up a mute master group 1 so that basically I can press 1. And in my case, I have it set up so my entire stage is muted with the press of 1 button. Also, what it has standard set is a home toggle button on number 11, which is not really something I use, but there are many options in them. Tons and tons and tons of options. There's different record settings, so just by pressing a button it would start recording or stop recording or record automatically. It's totally up to whatever you want it to do. Next thing you have is user-defined knobs, which are these knobs right across the bottom. And right now it's displaying what is the standard setup, which is output level, brightness panel, brightness name. What I like to do is just put the different brightnesses, so you can go into here and choose brightness, which I believe is at the top. Yeah, brightness, and I'm going to do, we got panel name, I'm going to do lamp. So I just changed that, so that's brightness of the lamp, which is something that's, the lamps are accessible from the back, and by pressing that you're able to control your lamp brightness. This one here, I'm able to control my names, so my names are going down when I do that, which it actually affects the color too, which is interesting, because if I go into here, there's actually a specific channel color, which is right here. So I can select this and increase my color while decreasing my name, I think. No, it looks like name and color is actually synced, which is interesting. But I like to have my name all the way up and my colors all the way or about midway. But basically what I did, now I have brightness all the way across the bottom, but you can do whatever setting you want. Actually, I was going to show you. Then we have custom faders, which is sort of a advanced user setup. You basically really have to know how to patch things and where everything is coming in. I only recommend it if you're an advanced user. There's also user levels, so you can, this is how I have actually set up so that user tech, which I will be using for my, a lot of my volunteers that work at the church, I have it locked down so that they can't affect they can't mess with anything and change it for other users or change other scenes. So you can actually change that user level and then lock that user to that specific setting. With this custom fader, basically what I've done is I can go through channels 1 through 16, or I mean, you can go through channels 1 through 32 in 4 different banks. So that's 32 times 4, whatever that is. I hate math. You could do that, and you could have specific order, you could have every single input available laid out in your 4 different banks. And the way you access those banks is over here. You have bank 1, you have 2, 3, whoops, and 4. So basically the standard for this is 1 through 32 is on 1, 33 through 64 is on 2, and then you have your DCAs and your stereo and your stereos. You have your DCAs and your stereo ends, and then here you have your mix and your matrix. So all your mixes are here, and your mixes are here, matrix are here, and you have your stereo left, right, mono, Q, monitor, that kind of thing. Most of the time you're not really going to want to mess with this. You just want to stay on 1 through 32, especially if you're a beginner user. But if you do accidentally press that button, just know you want to stay on 1 through 32. Another thing to do, and that's what all of those are not customizable. Those are just laid out the way they are. To customize them for this custom fader bank, custom master faders, you want to press the first one and the last one. So you press them together, and now you're on fader bank B. Okay, so with this B, now I have 4 different banks. Okay, so I can do this. It automatically sets them up as empty. But what I've done is I've already set up a custom fader bank. That's why these are all showing up, so that it's very similar to what I had originally set up. As you can see, this is a little bit different, but you can actually go through and select what you want to go into this channel, and you can leave it blank. You could do whatever you want with it. It's very nice to do. Nice thing to do for those that are a little bit more advanced, because I could put, if I was really fast at it, I could go, okay, I got a band performing, I'm going to hit fader bank B, I'm going to throw my guitar 1, guitar 2, my bass guitar, and my cajon and my vocal all right here. So that I just had them right here, and then all the rest of my band could be over here, or I could have them all separate so that I could just go, oh, band 1's playing, I'm playing down here, oh, band 4 is over here, that kind of thing. Not something that a beginner user would want to do, because it gets very confusing, because if you don't patch it correctly or name it correctly, you can make mistakes if you're not paying attention. Okay, next thing I will show you is your scene settings, or how to open a scene. Basically, you click this button here, and this shows a list of scenes. You scroll through them by using this knob, which is selecting that multi-select button. So right here I have, I think if I remember correctly, there's either 300 or 400 scenes you can have, which you're probably never going to use that many, because you can go through and just delete them. It's not like you're going to have 400 different settings, but in this case I've set up two settings, or 2 scenes. The first one is initial, but the 2 that I've set up have been front of house and then web streaming, which we're using 2 of these boards, one in the front of house and one in our web streaming room. And so I have 2 different settings. So what I do right now, I've been on, I still don't have video, or I still don't have pictures, because I was on the wrong bank. So again, I just had to select that to go back to my first bank. So I've been on web streaming as mine, but if I wanted to go front of house, Well, first off, I've made a couple changes I actually want to store. So basically what I did is that since I had this web streaming and I just made some changes, there's two options, store and recall, so I wanted to store it, so I stored it, and I went through, hit store. You could rename it if you wanted to, because you could save over it, and then I hit OK. If I want to recall it, like in this case, front of house, I want to recall, which actually, if you touch it, it will actually let me change the name of it. What you need to do is you scroll up, and then you want to hit recall. Okay, now it's recalled it. As you can see, it says here, scene 1, front of house. And as you can see, it's a little different. I don't have a couple of my options here. I only have my right channel of my CD. I didn't include my left when I'd originally saved this. It's a very rough draft. But now that that's loaded, I can exit out of this by pressing that again. Thank you for joining me. What I've shown you today have been the basics of the Yamaha QL5. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on the video.